Hi, this is Dan and Lexi from Dan Schultz Outdoors, reminding you, keep the adventures alive.
Hey y'all, I'm Johnny.
And I'm Colleen. And we're the Keel Quest. And we want you to keep the adventures alive. Cheers.
Hey, this is Darren from Ride Paddle Repeat, encouraging you to keep the adventures alive.
This is David from Beachley Ironworks saying keep the adventures alive.
Hey, Kevin with an A here. Keep the adventure alive.
Hi, I'm Dan Mayotte. Keep the adventures alive.
Hi, I'm Kevin Collin, the Happy Camper. Remember, keep the adventures alive. Awesome!
Woo, buddy! Shug here! Keep the adventures alive. I am.
Ethan here, the Avid Outdoorsy Guy, reminding you to keep the adventures alive.
We're John and Aaron.
Keep the adventures alive.
Hey everyone, it's Kylan from Lure of the North, and I encourage you to keep the adventures alive.
This is Sky North telling you, keep the adventures alive. And now on with the show.
Disclaimer. Tonight's episode of Canoehound's Outdoor Adventure Show is being presented to bring awareness about the 2-year Ontario Parks pilot fee structuring system and to discuss with like-minded people about the fairness of such a fee structuring system. All information shared in this episode are the opinions of the individuals within the show to help educate you and to bring awareness. Canoehound Adventures, Canoehound's Outdoor Adventure Show, and all persons in this episode assume no responsibility or liability for the information shared in this show. Our intention is to inform and educate you so you can make your own decision to pursue your own course of action to voice your opinion for or against the pilot fee structure system. Please do your own research and make a responsible choice. Hey, good evening, everybody, and hope everybody's having a great week. The weather's been very delightful out there. This is Canoehound's Outdoor Adventure Show, a show that brings you a lot closer to the great outdoors by bringing you hot topics and the YouTube content creators that you enjoy and watch. My name is Dennis, also known as Canoehound, and if you're new to the show, thank you very much for tuning in tonight. You guys have joined us tonight, if it's your first time, for a real barn burner. A topic tonight that's been well sought after over the last couple of weeks, but it's certainly not a new topic that has come up because this topic has been around since last April. Before we actually get into inviting our panelists up, I just want to give people the opportunity to pop into the chat over here so that they don't miss anything. And yeah, we'll go on from there. But I just want to get in a couple of really quick announcements before we do start with the show or the topic of discussion tonight. I'd like to thank all of my channel members. Firstly, we of late the channel is really beginning to grow, and it's due in part to our channel members, not our subscribers. Our subscribers obviously are our channel, But our channel members, which are like Patreon members, they have clicked that little join button down here that allows them to gain additional perks and benefits within the channel. There's 3 different levels that you could join at. And I just want to make the announcement that we are having, for our channel members only, a live stream on March the 31st. And essentially, it's a get-to-know-you type of live stream, as well as a huge swag giveaway. So anybody that is a channel member currently, or a new channel member leading up till March the 31st, will have an opportunity to win an awesome swag package courtesy of most of my channel sponsors or channel affiliates. We've got great things on there, like a nice Ursack bear-resistant food sack. We've got coffee from the Backcountry Coffee Company. A great selection of items from Kid Products. You can see there's a twig stove on there, fire striker, some utensils, a retractable bellow. We've got stuff from Algonquin Outfitters. Our friends over at Billy Bellow has the tube bellow there. That's what you see on the left-hand side of your screen, as well as great signs and graphics, Canoehound Adventures, all kinds of stuff. Right now, the value is about $450. If you want a chance to win that great package, you have to be a channel member. Just click on that link down there under the join, and you can do that at a later time, anytime leading up until March 31st, and you'll have your opportunity to win that. That's a nice little haul, and we actually have a couple more things that might be going in there, but we'll announce that next week. Let's see here. With that, I'm not sure if I mentioned, but thanks to my channel sponsors for sponsoring all that stuff. That's very generous of you, and thank you very much. There's a lot of things I'm going to leave out that I usually talk about at the beginning of the show before we get started, but tonight's topic is so important that I'm going to forego most of that stuff, but I do have 2 more things. One is, if you have any hot topics or guests that you would like to see on the show, this is something that's very important to me because I want to know what you want to see on the show. Drop me an email at canoehound@gmail.com. Let me know who you'd like to see or a topic you'd like us to cover. Sometimes we've already done it. I could send you links to that past video, and you can actually catch up if you're new to the channel. But yeah, let me know. And I also like feedback from you about the shows that we are putting on. To me, it helps me to improve the show, bring you a better quality night of entertainment. Great way to spend a Tuesday evening. And we're currently booking right now up until the middle of June, which is going to be the end of season 2. We'll take the summer off, and then we'll be right back into things around probably October-ish type of thing. So, yeah, we got to fill them dates, and make sure you get back to us or let us know exactly what you'd like to see on the show. Now, tonight I always say, and I say this every week, if you're new to the channel, your participation in the show is welcomed. Okay, we want to hear your questions. We want to know what you're, what you might be interested in. We want to know, your comments and questions. Over there in that chat is your opportunity to get your voice heard tonight. You can drop a question in there or a comment. If you have a question, all I ask is that you please put the question in capital letters, and we'll try and get that across to our panel tonight. By putting the word question in capitals, it gives me the ability to see it better, but I will forewarn you that because I'm a one-man show, I'm clicking all the buttons here and trying to keep things going down between the lines here. But I may not get to all your questions or comments. I apologize in advance. If your question is important, feel free to post it a couple times, but if I don't get to it, you have the opportunity after the 8 o'clock hour. Tonight, there's no swag giveaway. If you're here for swag, tonight's not the night for it because we're going to be carrying on with the show. But after 8 o'clock, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to open up the panel. I'll drop the link over in the chat. Feel free to get yourself set up. It's very easy on StreamYard. Just click the link. If you got a camera and a microphone, hook them up. Shut off your YouTube volume. Hit Enter Studio. And I will see you in what I call the basement. Below here, I could see you. Rest assured, I see you down there. Do not go anywhere. If you click yourself out, you go right to the end of the line. And we're going to give everybody about 2 minutes. So have your questions prepared. Make it a short question. Or if you have a comment, you have 2 minutes to give your comment. Please keep it clean. This is a family show. I have moderators that are in the live stream tonight. Moderators, you have full access to moderate as you see fit. If somebody is out of line and there's no place for it in this show, please do moderate to your best ability. You know what you can do to either block or hide comments and things like that. So please do keep a good eye on that. We want this to be a good show, and we want everybody to have an enjoyable evening and learn as much as they can about what's going on. So I really encourage you to try and come on panel and ask a question. 2 minutes though. That's very serious. I will cut you off after 2 minutes and move on to the next person. Without further ado, we're going to get right into it. I actually have a short list here on this sheet. Our first panelist is a Canadian author, paddler, outdoor enthusiast, and an activist. This guy's been around for a long time, and he knows a lot of the in and outs and politics of the Canadian backcountry and paddling. Please welcome to the live stream, one of my favorites, Hap Wilson. How you doing, Hap?
Doing just great. Thanks, Dennis. This is a great opportunity for me, and thank you for the invitation.
Hey, anytime. You know, I cherish your wisdom. All right.
Well, try not to disappoint you then.
No. You never have. Next, we're joined by an Ontario outdoorsman, canoeist, and fisherman from the YouTube channel Lost Lakes. This fella posted a YouTube video probably about a week and a half ago, which really took fire, and it got a great message out and brought to attention something that's been this whole topic that's been going on since April and is a 2-year pilot project. Like I say, his video has brought a lot of attention. Please welcome to the live stream, John from Lost Lakes. How you doing, John?
Hey, Dennis. Good. Thanks for giving this topic its dues.
You know what? It's important. It really is important. Lastly, we have another outdoorsman who undertakes wild lost canoe routes and brings them to life for all of us to enjoy on his YouTube channel, Explore the Backcountry. This young man has a very well-spoken demeanor about himself, very, very intelligent when it comes to outdoor topics and the kind of things that we're going to be discussing tonight. Please welcome to the live stream, Brad Jennings. How you doing, Brad?
Good, Dennis. Pleasure to be on here as always. Thanks for the invite tonight, and looking forward to chatting with this distinguished paddle and yourself. Our panel.
Awesome. And everybody over there in the chat, because we got, from what I'm seeing, about 190 people already in the live stream. Which tells me that this is a pretty important topic, something that really should be addressed, right? I'd like to give a little bit of this is my take, and a little bit of my history, or not my history, but a history on exactly what's going on before we actually get into the topic. So what's happening is Ontario Parks has implemented a pilot project amongst 2 provincial park areas. One is the Temagami cluster of parks, which involves 4 or 5 parks. Am I correct, Hap?
Yeah, there's 5 conservation reserves and waterway parks.
Okay, and then another park, which is the Massasauga Provincial Park. And basically what they're doing with this pilot program is they're testing the waters to see if a flat rate fee per campsite per night is going to fly, I guess, versus the traditional, or what most of us have become used to, the per night per person fee structure. And this whole program, a lot of people see it as fair, because there are 2 sides of the coin. A lot of people are seeing this as fair, and a lot of people are seeing this as very, very unfair. Mostly those that are smaller groups, solo paddlers, tandem paddlers. I guess it's from what I've heard, not until it hits about 4 people that it becomes like a break-even thing, and then a big savings for larger groups. And the whole intention of this show is to determine if this is the right program that they're putting together. You know, is this fair for everybody? As it's stated in my thumbnail for the show, is this a fair program for everybody? Jonathan, you put out a great video there last week or the week before, and what prompted you to put out that video?
I guess it just set off my fairness alarm. I don't find it fair. Like, I get there are some merits to it, but for everyone, it's definitely not fair. You completely screwed over one end of the spectrum, and now you're losing revenue from the other. I think there are better options out there. But at the same time, I'm not here to whine. I just want solutions and fairness for everyone. And we talk about accessibility a lot, right? All kinds of accessibility. Well, this is a financial accessibility barrier for retired people who are on a lower income, for anyone who is, not rich, which is a lot of paddlers. Most paddlers are not rich. And especially the thing that really bugs me is the notion that this might get brought across the entire Ontario park system, like this is setting such a dangerous precedent. If they were just doing it in 2 parks and that was it, like that, you know, that's different. But the thought of Wabakimi or something, or going to this model where there are absolutely almost no facilities or no infrastructure, we know how little funding there is. It just wouldn't make sense to me. And like I said in my piece on YouTube, I'm willing to pay taxes and fees. You know, I'm fine with that as long as they're reasonable. And I want the park system to be self-sufficient, but not just on the backs of soloists and groups of 2. I want it to be accessible for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right off the top, and I knew this was actually going to come up like throughout the entire show. Wilderman Northern Adventures. I just booked 2 weeks solo, and they wanted $44 per night. Seriously, that's why we're trying to bring this to light, and I'm sure one of the reasons why you have as well, John, is the fact that it's not a system that's fair for everybody. It will benefit some, but it doesn't benefit others, right? You know. I could read the one thing through a canned letter that if you contact the ministry, one of the things that they say. Now this here, I had no less than 4 people send me a copy of this email, which is an email that is, if you approach the Ontario parks, this is basically their cut and paste response that they send back to you. I will pop it up on screen later too to give you the opportunity to read, or if you want, I could email you a copy of what I have. This was not sent to me personally, okay? This was actually forwarded to me. And the one thing that they're saying is Ontario Parks is moving from the current per person per night fee, Ontario Parks, the key word there. Ontario Parks is moving from a current per person per night fee to a flat per campsite fee model for backcountry camping. By doing so, they're streamlining the backcountry fee structure across the province and making it consistent with car camping. Other key word there, across the province. So that there kind of lends me to believe that it's not going to stop with the Massasauga and the Temagami region of parks. There's a lot of parks out there right now that they can actually expand us out into. Anybody want to jump on that? Silent from the masses. Brad, you have a good understanding of how a little bit of policy works when it comes to implementing fees within parks, right?
Yeah. Okay. So to take it back, obviously we're well aware it's a 2-year pilot project, as Dennis has mentioned here. I think the main consideration that we're all kind of apprehensive about, rather, is that if it is in fact a success, deemed a success, and they want to roll out this flat rate fee across the province. Well, of course, in Ontario, there is roughly about 30 operational parks for which Ontario Parks manages and charges backcountry fees under the current structure. And that's just operational provincial parks. That's not getting into such things as conservation reserves or adjacent crown lands. And that's a whole nother jurisdictional issue, and that's a whole nother ball of wax. So we can throw out of this debate for now, only because that's not really in scope as to at least my understanding of the pilot project. So currently there is a variety of different fee structures across Ontario parks. And I mean, if you just go on their fee structure page, you'll see that there's a lengthy table with about 30 or so different fees broken down by age category, by seniors, and by youth. And one thing to also keep in mind when we're talking about these fees, there is the regular campsite fee, there is a senior fee, and there's also a youth and disability fee. So not everyone's going to be paying the same fee. So in Lady Evelyn's Smooth Water right now, it's bumped up to a $36.73 flat fee. But if you're a senior, I think it's $29.38, and then if you're disabled,
put that back up.
Yeah. So it's a tiered system, and it's always been a tiered system. And even when you book campsites as well, there's a tier to it too. But right now, they also have backcountry permits. So some of these wilder areas that John mentioned, such as Wabakimi, they charge you on a permit system where you book zones in your backcountry area. That's also for French River, Woodland, Caribou. Other parks such as Quetico charge you for access fees. And then other parks, you have a book per campsite or a book per lake, and they also have different fee structures for those as well too. Because I think right now, for example, Algonquin, Killarney, Kawartha Highlands, some of the more popular parks are about $2 more per person per night than some of the not so popular parks. So right now they do have a bit of a quagmire in terms of how the fee structure is currently structured. So you're not paying the same fee in different parks, and it depends upon the permitting system that they use. So right now there's a bit of a hodgepodge kind of rolled out over all 28 or 29 or so managed areas that charge fees right now. So just something to be aware of when we're talking about this, that if this were to be rolled out, that there would still be likely a breakdown. But if it's rolled out across the board, you're then potentially getting rid of those permit structures or those other structures that are in place as well too, and just rolling a flat fee or something that's very similar to a flat fee. There still might be differences. I mean, I can't speak to Ontario parks at this point in time too, but that's at least my understanding right now of how we're currently structured on a fee structure.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that I was really concerned about, and I had mentioned it to you, and you actually explained it quite well to me about, right now this is provincial parks that are operational provincial parks, okay, 2 of them. If it rolls out to the remaining operational provincial parks, then you have multiple. Then what's to stop them from eventually turn around and saying, you know what, well, non-operational parks, like maybe Naganash Provincial Park, someplace that I really like to paddle now, right? What's to stop them from starting to charge fees there? Because, well, all it is a click of a button on the website, right? And then maybe taking it into eventually trying to monetize the use of Crown land, something that as Canadians we have a right to.
So you're kind of divulging with the Crown land thing. That's different legislation, but we can stick right now with regulated provincial parks and conservation reserves and whatnot. And for a fee to be charged, at least from my understanding of the policy side of things, you would need to have a management plan in place. And I think a lot of people, when we think about parks, we think about these main 30 or so parks that people paddle, and then a handful of the non-operational ones, like you mentioned, such as Naganash, Dennis, and I'm sure Hap will speak later in the show about how a lot of these came into being. A lot of these were Ontario's living legacy and lands for life, and Ontario parks really expanded the amount of protected area. I'm not sure of the amount, but it was quite a large amount. I think it was over half, and now there's over about 600 parks and conservation reserves in Ontario, all with different intents and different classifications. And not all of them offer backcountry paddling, but let's say a subset of those that do, they would still need to go through management planning processes, and they would still be open to public consultation should they want to operationalize those parks. Now, I'm not sure if there's a backdoor bit of legislation or policy that would enable them to charge a fee for a non-operational park, but as far as I'm aware of how Ontario Parks operates and their current structure, that would not be the case. So it would still have to go through management planning processes, and that it's supposed to take about 5 years, but at the current rate, it takes about 15 years, and Ontario Parks is understaffed and underfunded. I think it's something around 89 to 97% of Parks budget comes from user fees. So your tax dollars are not actually paying for management of the parks, much like a lot of the parks in the States, such as the Adirondacks, where a lot of people are, touting that, hey, we got a free fee structure here. Well, U.S. government parks, your fees are so low because a lot of it is coming from your tax dollars. But here in Ontario, we don't have that. So yes, you're saving a bit of money off your paycheck, but at the same time, then the park still needs to find some way to stay afloat. However, at that point, I don't foresee them rolling this across to all these non-operational parks to make a quick cash grab, unless it was something that was in new legislation and policy, in which case it would still have to go through some form of public consultation. And you can be damn well sure that all the paddlers and recreational users out there will be watching the bill like that, like a hawk, just to make sure that that doesn't get passed without comment as well too.
Right. So Hap, you've got quite the history with like, you know, with the backcountry and your activities that you, like, you know, you partaken into, like preservation of Temagami and stuff like that. What can you tell us that has led us to where we are now? What's the background on this?
Well, you know, it's an interesting study case for sure, and the a lot of the issues actually began almost a century ago, and it's not just with the First Nations, you know, claim for the traditional territories. That's you know, that part of that issue is still unsolved and unresolved at this point. But if you look at the history, the archaeological inventory for Temagami, which is fairly extensive. It's only been, say, 10%. 10% of it has been, journaled by a professional archaeologist. Thor Conway was in. You know, he was doing the studies for the district back in the 1970s, and he took part in the court case with the Temagami Anishinaabe. You know, during that sensational court battle for traditional lands, and at that time he claimed that you know, 90% of Temagami has not been researched for First Nations and cultural integrity. So that's you know, that's one thing. If you look back at the logging in Temagami, for example, it took precedence over First Nations land rights. You know, they were quoted as saying the natives don't have rights to the land, so that gave them you know, express permission to build dams for you know, moving logs from one lake to another, and flooding out archaeological campsites and pictographs, that kind of thing. So that's gone on for the last 100 years, and I think what's happening, and I saw that. I was working with the ministry for about 10 years in Temagami as a park ranger and other and Fish and Wildlife for you know, a couple of seasons, and you learned fairly quickly that you know, there were two sets of files really. The one was operational, and then one was for public consumption, and that was, you know, it was continually being edited. Temagami has gone through a number of incredible issues pertaining to you know, just the establishment of a wilderness park, and you know, having to deal with so many user groups, the you know, from First Nations to anglers and hunters to you know, loggers and mining and prospecting, you know, and trying to get a common ground agreement between all facets was pretty difficult, you know, through the 1980s, 1990s. But I think if you look at the core issues, has to do a lot with you know, what are people really getting for their money these days, and are you know, the existing parks, are they sustainable? And you know, and when you look at a lot of the parks like Algonquin, that's being, you know, 65% of that's being logged currently, and there's more logging roads in Algonquin Park than there are in the city of Toronto. You know, a lot of you know, and I think an environics study showed that only 14% of people actually realized that there was logging going on in Algonquin. So I've seen a lot of deterioration in parks, conservation reserves, waterway parks, and which is very unfortunate. So that's, you know, I think the ramifications of that, it's not going to be just economical, but it's going to put stress on other areas like Crown land, for example. 60% of backcountry use is in Crown land. It's not in provincial parks or protected areas, and these are the areas that are where there is a lot of resource extraction going on. So is that really going to be attractive to people? So what's happening there is that our inventory to increase the number of parks is not really keeping up with the demand. So I see that's one of the core problems that we have, where A lot of the parks are being overused and not managed. They don't have the budget to manage them properly. Smoothwater, Lady Island Smoothwater is a classic example. They've really haven't kept to the tenets for good management. In a lot of cases, they've and I can give you a list of like Environmental Bill of Rights and Statement of Environmental Values, to Temagami Integrated Planning for Crown Land Recreation, even Section 35 Constitution Act of 1982 and the Ontario Trails Act 2016. There's been I think a long-standing argument against the logging industry because of the fact that they've always had precedence over non-timber values, and I think that is one of the problems, is that there's not a great understanding by the Ministry of Natural Resources about other, like I say, non-timber values. So once we address the core values, I think we can understand more about why the park fees are being elevated.
So it goes pretty deep, right? Like the ultimate goal, I think, of Ontario Parks is they're trying to become 100% self-sustained, right? Where they don't have to rely on government funding, right? And that's all going to be falling on the backs of us as paddlers, right? So the one thing that comes in this canned email that is sent out there is the one line that says, let's see here. They manage 340 provincial parks, which is largely funded through users' fees collected solely for the use of Ontario parks. That money that the visitors pay for services like backcountry access and camping in Ontario parks stays in Ontario parks. And in 2019, Ontario parks operated at 90% self-sufficiency. So they're getting to the point now where they are getting darn close to being 100% self-sustainable. I can't see why they wouldn't be with the rash or the rush of people in light of COVID that's going on. Trying to book a place is like next near to impossible now because everybody wants to be in the backcountry, which is meaning that's got to be a lot more revenue coming in. No.
Yeah. Hap touched on the point that, like, what are we getting for this money? And it's funny. Brad's dad, Wayne, just posted a trip in the Massasauga, and I noticed like this decking. They laid out this like flat deck for a tent pad, which seems like an exorbitant waste of money for laying down a tent to me. If that's what we're paying for, then take it back to $9 a night. I'm good with that. And no picnic table, no deck to set up my tent on in the backcountry. Like, if they're trying to make the backcountry the front country, like that makes no sense.
That's one of the big issues with this whole thing is this trying to get themselves in line or consistent with our car camping fee model, right? They are two totally different animals. You can't put them in the same category. Backcountry is backcountry. Car camping is car camping.
Let me read something from this is a paper that I just picked out today. It's the non-timber values in forest management in Ontario, and it was filed on behalf of Forest for Tomorrow. It was a coalition, actually, and it was a hearing before the Environmental Assessment Board. Quote, despite organizational changes, the OMNR essentially remains as a conservative bureaucracy that has not kept pace with the dramatic changes that are occurring within the OMNR's operating environment. This problem is reflected in the OMNR's inadequate understanding and management of non-timber values. The problem is also reflected in the virtual absence of qualified OMNR staff who are technically capable of acquiring and using the necessary, technically capable of acquiring and using the necessary information on non-timber values. And I think it says a lot about the trying to protect non-timber values. We don't have a ministry that is sensitized towards why we need parks, the values of parks, the integrity of parks. Why are we going out there? What motivates us to go to these parks to begin with? And it's not just the protection of the ecological integrity. It's especially times like this. when we need that psychological and emotional connection with nature. And then, the command from Queen's Park is to make more money. Ontario Parks needs to make more money. And because backcountry users in the past traditionally have not generated a lot of money for the provincial coffers. And I think that's why they're trying to equalize that with something that they understand, and that's car camping, and that's modern camping, which has no place in a lot of our park system. So there's not the qualified staff that understands non-timber values.
Right.
Hey,
Brad, can I ask you, Brad, really quick? Just one sec, John. What do you think actually spurs this pilot program that they put across to us?
So Hap just touched on it as well too, that it's a mandate, as far as I'm aware, that's coming from the new government for Ontario Parks to spur a profit and to make a profit. And to Hap's point as well, that yes, backcountry users paying $9 per person per night are likely not generating a large degree of profit to maintain those parks. So Ontario Parks, for the most part, it's all those fees that it generates are coming from Algonquin, the Pinery, Presque Isle, Sandbanks, I believe as well. These are the big popular parks that generate, the majority of the revenue through those car camping and those day use fees. And backcountry users, while we are a strong and mighty group, do not simply generate the same degree of revenue for Ontario Parks. And I mean, as you can imagine, Ontario Parks does a lot more than just offer, a fire pit and maybe a picnic table and a tent pad and clear portage for you. This is also paying for studies. It's paying for remediation, restoration, planning. You have to pay staff to do these management plans to get those parks operationalized, like we had mentioned before. And to Hap's point as well too, I mean, if you leave a lot of these non-operational parks kind of languishing in this sort of state of, we don't have a management plan on the table, but yet we want to, it leaves a lot of the boxes unchecked because there's no adequate direction to take the park in there. So, I mean, I can see the push from Queen's Park to want to make Ontario Parks more profitable. And it might not necessarily be as nefarious as we think about trying to turn a profit for the evil corporate entity. So maybe more along the lines of trying to figure out a way to make the entire park system a little more self-sustaining. And you can even see in some of the initiatives that Parks has done over the last few years, such as doing learn to camp programs and putting tent cabins and yurts out there, trying to diversify the park experience, get more people out there, and at the same time try to get more folks involved in the outdoors while providing alternative revenue streams for parks so that they can still operate across the province. So I mean, it's coming from Queen's Park, but we can't necessarily paint it all black and white and say that it's for pure profit greed without necessarily knowing all the facts. And of course, because it's a pilot project, I'm sure we'll hear the outcome of the study after the 2 years. And what they found from it and whatnot in terms of, is this actually going to generate more profit? Because it might turn some soloists and individuals away. That MECP letter that you've been touting and circulating, in it, I think the representative stated that 11% of park users in the backcountry are soloists, and I think an additional 38% or 36% are tandem paddlers. So that represents, roughly 48%. So under this pilot project, you would see a fee increase for about roughly 50% of your user base, and then a cost savings to an additional 50% or 52%. So the cost savings are in the slim majority here. But I guess the question then remains, will this turn off soloists and tandem paddlers from paddling in some of these parks? While benefiting more families getting out there, and in the end, will that generate more revenue for parks in the long run, or will it lead to maybe a dip in the pockets as paddlers don't want to paddle in the Temagami area and pay 300% more, and instead go to adjacent Crown land? So I think we You just need to keep the mindset that it is a pilot and focus, and that they're just testing to see what they can recuperate in terms of fees and profitability, and also be aware that, you know, this is a huge system that involves way more than just offering camping facilities for folks out there. There's a lot more that Ontario Parks does in the background and even in the foreground that we can see out there as well too, beyond just ranger programs and trail maintenance as well too.
Right. Fully understandable. I find it interesting, some of the numbers that you pointed out there. One of the viewers that I could see that's in the chat tonight, Ellen Drummond, had sent me a survey that was taken from Ontario Parks back in, I believe, 2012. And although it's a 9-year-old study, some of the numbers in there really relate, and it gives you all the factual numbers. I guess when you go to provincial parks and they give you those surveys, they actually tabulate these things, and they actually do put forth numbers that help them do their magic, right? To figure out what they need to do, how they got to do it, what they got to charge, when, where, how, all these other things. Thanks for sending that over, Alan. I had a lot of correspondence about this show, a lot of things that really opened my eyes and took me from realizing that, you know, there are two sides to the story. But still, the topic of this evening's show is the fairness portion. Is it fair for everybody, right? You know, there's a lot of interesting facts out there, and the reason, like Brad, you're saying that this is a 2-year pilot project. What's to happen at the end of the 2 years? Are they automatically going to revert it back to the per person fee, or are they going to keep on maintaining that until they say, yeah, you know what, yes or no, right?
Well, fees are going to go up, and like, we're going to pay more in the long run. We've been paying more every year because we're trying to float the system. But you're right on the fairness aspect. I mean, I think something that a lot of people have touted, and I know you might have been talking about this later in the episode, but I think before we get off track, is that there are other avenues for implementing a fee system here that could be, you know, fair for other users, such as a tiered system where you have maybe a flat fee that based on your group size goes to a max, or there's an increment per person until you reach a max, so that you still retain that sort of equity and fairness for large groups. And then you don't necessarily dissuade soloists and tandem paddlers from going to these parks as well too. Because I mean, to paddle in Temagami right now, it's almost cheaper to purchase a dingy motel. And myself, last year, Leah and I went through Lady Evelyn Smoothwater, and no fault of parks, because I mean they only have 2 rangers going through there, but paying $36 per night, and we bushwhack slogged through, you know, recent burns, and half the campsites in that area, you know, no longer exist because of that massive forest fire. Parks just does not have the capacity to go in there and clear all the trees as they're coming down, because after a forest fire, the trees will come down and windthrow and whatnot. So you have a maintenance problem that'll snowball over the years. But then the soloists ask themselves, is this worth $36 a night for me to, you know, just basically push myself and suffer, whereby in other parks, such as Massasauga, where you're paying a little more, you get a picnic table, a bear hang in some instances, a big tent platform, all these other amenities as well too. So in terms of fairness, it's potentially not a fair fee to pay. And I'm in agreement. I mean, I paid it, I swallowed it because I wanted to see this section of Lady Evelyn Smoothwater, but it's not necessarily a place I'm going to go back with Leah and myself on like a weekend trip. We're up here in Timmins, so it's only 3 hours south of us to get down there, but it's not necessarily going to be our go-to region to paddle because of the fee. If you're accessing a park, you know, there's the gas you have to pay, there's the equipment you have to buy as well too, and all the other stuff. So as John said, backcountry paddlers aren't necessarily rich, but you know, they have to pony up a bit of money to go there, and never mind the folks that have to rent canoes or equipment to get out there as well too. So you know, I understand where they need to make money off of things, but you're right, it's not necessarily fair for those who now have to pay the same rate as a larger group of people who can split up that money between them. Now, that's not to say that families, because you know, a group of a family is always going to pay the same fee. Your kids aren't going to do extra dishes maybe to pay for it, but other than that, you're not asking your 6-year-old or your 17-year-old to pony over that extra bit of cash to help pay for that fee. So you're right. I mean, in terms of fairness, it doesn't break down necessarily evenly throughout all the groups. So perhaps instead of getting, outrageous and angry at it, we can also explore other options, and that might be something that Ontario Parks does in the end as well too.
Right. Very good. John, I'm going to get to you because I know you had something that you wanted to input, but I just wanted to say that file that Ellen Drummond had sent over to me is in the description below. I got a couple of links down there that you might find interesting to check out. One of the things in that article that also touched on was the average household income of backcountry paddlers. So you might find it quite surprising what you'll see there. This is back in 2012, but it still could relate kind of to today's thing. John, you had something that you wanted to add?
Actually, Brad pretty much answered it there. I was going to ask Hap what amenities he's seen in Temagami that would warrant that kind of a price compared to Mississauga, where, maybe a waste of money in my opinion, but at least they're doing something with it for the park. With 2 rangers and, hardly any route maintenance or anything, I'm just not sure where that money's going, and it doesn't seem like it's going to that park.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think unfortunately, the rangers who they may take every 2 or 3 years, they'll take pick a couple of routes and then go down and attempt to maintain it. I know my wife and I do a lot of the maintenance, as do a lot of the backcountry users. The maintenance now is mostly up to the user groups, and gone are the days when you portage a canoe and you're carrying an axe in one hand, and you clear deadfalls out of the way as you go along. It doesn't happen anymore, and you can't depend on the rangers. And the rangers aren't qualified to clear trails, in my opinion. Temagami has been a disaster for portage clearing and implementing or changing the scope of portages from 5,000-year-old Nestogan routes. So instead of clearing out a tree, they'll branch off and go someplace else. And we've been correcting portages that the ministry has been changing the locations constantly in Smoothwater Park. Last year they went in, I think, put in 3 pit privies without digging holes. Just left a mess, left punji sticks around the box privies. Left all the slash on the trails for snags and for tripping. We had to go and clean them all off. So is this what you're paying for? Your high fees. I think most of it must go to administration, and they're constructing a new building for the park superintendent in Temagami, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of it's going into that construction project. There's absolutely nothing going into from what I see on and the problems that are mounting on Smoothwater Beach, for example, with motorboats, and they're not capable of monitoring because it's such a wide district to police or monitor. I think the 25 horsepower limit on Smoothwater Lake is exceeded constantly by local people, towing much bigger boats in so they can water ski off the beach. Fireworks being set off on the beach. It's a 5,000-year-old archaeological site. People are building latrines on the beach site, and with no concern for the cultural integrity of that beach. Yet this has been allowed throughout the years, throughout the tenure of the current park superintendent to despoil this cultural site and a place where backcountry paddlers enjoyed for almost 100 years without any disturbance by heavy motorized recreationalists. So, this is where your money's going to go, or no. Answer your question flatly. There's been really, maybe a few box privies set up, and that's about it, and poor maintenance on the portages. That's it.
And that doesn't really offset the prices that they're asking or will be charging, right? So
that just got me thinking about Quetico. We were there last year for 2 weeks, and it's one of those parks that's $11 per person per night, so a couple bucks more than the base fee of $9, as in a lot of parks. But that was completely justifiable. Portages were extremely well maintained. The park even puts out a map saying what month each portage was last maintained in, and it was usually very recent. There were in Quetico, there are no signs, no portage signs, none of that. It's very like a wilderness park style. But in my opinion, that's an extremely well-managed park and with appropriate fees where you're getting what you pay for. I think Aaron and I went for 15 nights, and for both of us, it was like $360 or so. That's justifiable, but yeah, for a soloist in these parks, it's not.
Yeah, but I was a ranger in Temagami for 8 years. We had a non-signage policy that was pretty standard in wilderness parks, but they changed that with the new district managers and superintendents. So that interestingly, when I was working on the Trans-Canada Trail mapping for through Quetico and up through Atikokan, came back through the Gunflint route, and it's an international border where portages and park systems have been maintained in the Lake Superior Provincial Forest. Immaculate campsites and portages. On the Ontario side, which is the Heritage Waterway and a provincial waterway park, portages had never been cleaned for decades. Campsites were either non-existent or not maintained. Portages were just in atrocious condition. So you can see the amount of money that's going into our park systems. It's just not happening.
Right. I just want to, everybody in the chat over there, we're going to get into a couple poll questions later there where we can put number ones in there to answer a question. But I do want to address something here that I've seen a couple times throughout the chat. And I am way behind on the chat. Forgive me. Just there's too much conversation going on here, which is a good thing. But Pam Bookham was asking, did I invite an Ontario Parks rep to explain the thinking behind this policy and what were their objectives? I did put out an email. I guess I'll say in their defense, I did put it out a week and a half ago, but to this point, I have not had any response. I was not even fortunate enough to get one of these canned message emails back from them. The only reply I did get was one of the auto replies saying, "We did get your email." So, but I've had no words, and I'm not going to mention who I actually sent to because I don't want to put anybody on the spot. But it is somebody that was in charge of rolling out this pilot project, and So, in all fairness, I would have loved, and I mean really loved, to have had somebody from Ontario Parks on here to explain their reasoning with this pilot project and what they expected to get out of it, and to answer a lot of questions, because we don't want this to be a one-sided topic. As one person put in a Facebook post, he says, if we don't have anybody from their side, it's going to turn into a one-sided wine fest. To this point, I don't think it has. I think you guys are bringing up some very viable points. I think we're doing a good job of even representing them on that side. With some factual stuff. So, the whole ultimate thing here is to determine and help everybody to sort of gather their own opinion on this thing. And, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and, no one can tell you whether you're right or wrong because it's your opinion. So we'll just keep on going with that. I hope everybody's getting something out of this so far tonight, because I know I sure am.
Do we have time to dwell on that for a second? Some of those arguments in favor?
Yeah, most certainly. Yeah, I would love that. I like I say, I want people to be educated here as far as everything that's going on. So, yeah, what's your take on it, John?
So, on my video, I got some really interesting responses, and some of them, there's no argument that I can make against them. Like, some areas have finite parking, so what you're really paying for is a parking spot. Because that is a very finite resource. I feel like campsites, there's so many, it seems ridiculous to charge them as though they're sold out. In some cases they are, but that seems unfair to me. But the parking thing I kind of get. The other argument that was, I think, the strongest that I heard was that some groups will go into let's say a small lake in Algonquin with 3 sites on it. They're a group of 3. They each book a site individually. It charges them the same price, and then they get the whole lake to themselves. That's not fair. So I think there could be, that's a flaw for the per person per night model. So I think there is a hybrid that could be found. And then people have argued that it helps with families and youth groups, but thing is they already get half price for youth under 18. So I feel like that is a reasonable compromise for those groups. Whereas the other end of the spectrum, soloists are really getting hosed.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, I want to see this here as as like I mentioned, sort of like a poll type of question. I got to put this up here because I have to address this here. Sean Sider is asking, are we talking about fees or logging tonight? Well, I believe the logging portion actually ties into the whole baseline of why all this stuff is happening. Okay. What Hap was explaining there is all relevant to all that is going on right now with this entire situation. But the one question I have, okay, and this is simple, flat. First, are you a solo paddler that will be directly affected by this current fee structure? If you are, please just put a number 1 in the chat. I just want to sort of get an idea of how many people are feeling affected, or we'll keep it that solo or a tandem paddler that will be directly affected by this. I'm curious to see that. As the numbers are rolling through the chat, the next thing I wanted to ask is, does anybody out there think, this is to the guys on the panel, does anybody feel that this is a lazy approach that the Parks is taking to implement this structure? And what I mean by that is, rather than what John had mentioned earlier about, with today's technology, trying to, or being able to set up different fees for different parks, are they taking a lazy man's approach to say, you know what, we're just going to flat rate it across the board?
It's hard to call it lazy necessarily. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the background we're likely not aware of, because a lot of this too comes from like a policy standpoint. So it comes from a policy division likely in Ontario Parks, or some policy branch of it. And as it's a pilot as well too, I mean, in some regards, they might be testing to see what users like us are going to respond by saying. So maybe it's not lazy. Maybe it's actually proactive in seeing, will this actually have an impact, and will there be a response from individuals who may or may not be affected? So, I mean, maybe it's lazy if you want to call it that, but I think it also could be quite pointed and potentially strategic in terms of their approach for trying to figure out a way and who it would affect rather. But I mean, some of the stuff is coming from a policy perspective too, and sometimes these decisions as to where it'll be rolled out might be arbitrary, and then they don't necessarily seem that way on the surface to us, or there is a reasoning behind it that we're not necessarily aware of because we don't have access to those background information documents or the policy documents at hand. And again, some of that stuff after the pilot project is rolled out could potentially be requested through a Freedom of Information Act, such as the PIPA, and you might be able to get some answers to a PR representative at Ontario Parks as well too. But I wouldn't necessarily go so far as calling it lazy at this point in time. I would just call it interesting and potentially not as well thought out as some folks would like it to be, but maybe it's actually more well thought out than most of us are giving them credit for as well too.
Right. What I meant by lazy man's fee, I didn't mean, obviously, there's a lot that goes into this. There's an awful lot that goes into this. But what I meant by lazy man's approach is like, it's them saying, you know what, let's just do a flat rate fee and call it a day type of thing. I know it's a pilot project, but that's what the approach I feel like, as John said, there could be different rates for every single park. They could have flat rate fees for certain parks. They could have tiered systems. They could have per person per day rates for certain certain parks. It's possible. It's doable, right?
I'm not going to call it lazy, but I'll say that a horrible job of communication. This whole policy seemed to just be slipped in with. I didn't know about it for a year. And like backcountry camping is my life. I just didn't go to these parks. It came to my attention when I looked into Temagami. But the whole, they're just blowing hot air all the time. Communicate with us, give us a straight answer and a rationale. Like, why are you doing this? What is your rationale? That's what I'd love to know, instead of being told we're streamlining and giving a canned response to everyone who actually gives a damn and bothers to write in. talk to us like adults and give us a real rationale of substance.
So don't forget too, John, there's all this red tape reduction bills that were all passed with the new Ford government as well too. So by streamlining, I know personally that streamlining would be a form of red tape reduction versus having a multi-tiered system, even though technically in a computer system it might seem easy for the end user. I mean, they might have to go through stuff on their end, but it checks a box that it's a reduction of burden as well too, potentially. So I mean, that might be one way where that's coming through as well too, right? So
but to the average person who they're communicating with, it's meaningless. Streamlining is meaningless. Tell me something that means something to me is my problem. Like I know they have objectives, but they still have a duty to communicate with the public that they serve.
Yeah,
need to be a little more transparent. Yeah,
fully agree. Transparency as well, even if that is your goal, is to reduce red tape or whatnot. I fully agree with you.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting little tidbit here from Frame Engineer saying using fair as a tactical argument is probably a non-starter and most likely divisive, as the administrator and larger groups will pivot on one side and solo and tandem canoeists on the other. This is so true, and I still think that is the thing that does not make it a fair system for everybody. I know they will never ever be able to have something that will keep 100% of the masses happy. It's just not. It's not human nature. It's just not. It's not doable, right? But the fact is there's got to be something that could get us closer to the word fair, for lack of a different word. There has to be something that can actually get us closer to fair. And speaking of that, okay, so I asked about the tandem and solo type of paddlers, putting a number 1 in the chat. The reason why I'm asking these questions is because I want to go back after and rewatch this, and I want to start counting numbers, and I just want to see people's take on this, how balanced this whole scale is. So I want to know in the chat how many people out there are in favor of a flat rate system. Put a number 2 in the chat, please, just to keep it separate from the number 1, right? Put a number 2 in there, just so that I get a gathering of how many people actually think that this would be a fair system, because I know there are some out there. And is it more beneficial to you? Yeah.
Now, I mean, open-ended too, Dennis. Like, would you consider, like, if the fee structure was different as well? If you could have a flat rate fee, but it would potentially be lower or higher, I don't know, right? Is that open-ended, or is you just talking about the current fee structure as implemented under the pilot project?
Under the pilot project. I'd like to know if people are happy with that, because I did have, and I won't call them arguments, I'll say comments in a couple of the threads that I put out on Facebook about it. And some people were all in favor of it. One fella was very, very adamant about how happy he was to be saving $2 a day with his family of 6, right? So, he's entitled to that opinion, right? Everybody is, and that's what I say is this entire system, and that's what they need to look at being a pilot project is it fair, or how can they make this work so that it's beneficial, obviously, to them as well as people like us, people that are obviously concerned, right? Yeah. So let's see here, other things. Now we're talking about amenities and how they can do what they're doing. Now, Massasauga Provincial Park is so different from Temagami in the respect that I almost relate Massasauga Provincial Park to sort of like a playground provincial park, the way it's set up with the amenities, the fire pits, the steel fire rings, the fact that it's a safety thing, the thing that they're putting bear vaults in, picnic tables in a backcountry setting. I'm sorry, I'm not a fan. If I want a picnic table, I'll go car camping, right? But that's just me. But are these amenities that we can do with or without? But why are they doing the Temagami sector as well? Because you go there, and as they stated in the letter here, and I'm going to read this because I don't want to be misconstrued here. The per night fees at the Massasauga and Temagami cluster of parks are reflective of the amenities available at the respective parks. The per night fee for Massasauga backcountry campsites is higher than the fee at the Temagami cluster of parks. Cluster of parks. Sorry, I lost my spot here. I need new glasses. I'll start that sentence again. The per night fee for Massasauga backcountry campsites is higher than the fee for Temagami cluster of parks. Cluster of parks is more because basically at Massasauga they have all kinds of amenities, and at Temagami they don't. Why are they doing that? Why are the rates going up per se if there's no the amenities are not there?
Well, here's one look at it. And the ministry, and we have to remember that we're really dealing with Queen's Park, Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. Ontario Parks is just basically a puppet operation at this point. And they often throw out ludicrous initiatives just to see what kind of reaction they're going to get. And I think that's part of the mandate for this test system, is just to see what people are going to say, if it's if it's accepted, if it's balanced, if it's fair. Programs like this where people are open to discussion about it. I think that this is all being monitored by by Ontario Parks, Ministry of Natural Resources, and and the resulting would probably help them make some kind of decision one way or the other. But I think because Temagami has been such a controversial provincial park for the last several decades, I think this is just one part of the of the project initiative is to pick a park where people are going to either be pro or against, and so they can find out just exactly how to proceed from there.
Right. I am just setting up, and I'm putting the link in the chat. Join us on panel for a question with a 2-minute maximum period per person. If we don't get many people taking us on this, we may give you a little bit more time, but try and keep your questions or have your questions prepared or comments to stay within that 2-minute period, just so that we could try and get as much participation here in the second half of the show and get these things all answered up. So the link has been set. There it is. I will post that a couple times here throughout the next hour, and we'll see what happens with this here. So don't be shy, people. Come on up. It's very simple to come on and share with us.
As a bit of a comparison, are you moving on, Dennis?
Yeah, carry on, John. Yeah.
Someone wrote me on YouTube and they said, for comparison, backcountry camping permit for the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, which they say is the most visited national park in the US, is $4 per night per person, with a maximum of $20 for a 7-night stay. So if that's the most visited park in the US, like just as a point of reference, anyway, I don't want to whine, but if I can present a couple of solutions, pricing proposals that I think would work for Ontario, and what I would be willing to accept. If there was a $15, $12, maybe $15 base fee per campsite, irrespective of your party size, and then you pay like $4 or $5 extra per extra user on your site. That way it doesn't unfairly charge big groups a lot of money, like perhaps the $9 per person per night fee does, but you're also not totally jacking up the price for small parties. Kind of a middle ground. And then the other policy that they could take, and this is obviously completely hypothetical, but is doing it into tiered groups. So a party of up to 2 pays $18, a party of up to 4, $36, and then maybe cap it at a maximum of $50, $54, something around there. I think those are prices that people could stomach and that they could rationalize. But yeah, the current price, I can't.
No, and that's the whole problem. Okay, we do have a few people down in the basement, as I call it, the basement. We'll bring our first guest up for his 2 minutes here. Martin Pine, how you doing tonight, sir?
I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for letting me on.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us. What have you got, sir?
Well, one of the things that's bothering me is that we're talking an awful lot about this as a fee hike, which of course it is, but there's also been a lot of talk about price gouging and stuff like that. And I think that if you want to sort of reach a larger concerned audience, if you want to get this message out to a lot of people, you can't make it sound like we're all just a bunch of cheapskates whinging about a price hike. I think that there's an ecological concern that we ought to be invoking here that is directly affected by this fee structure. As I see it, that this particular price hike, this fee structuring, generates very, very perverse incentives. It's punitive for people who are going solo or just tandem. Many of whom are very young. I know a lot of. I live in Huntsville. I know a lot of young people in and around Muskoka who like to go into the park. This is really expensive for them. It's going to disincentivize their going. Meanwhile, larger groups are going to be incentivized because, of course, if it costs $40 a night, and there's 9 of you, and that's under $4.50 a person. That's pretty good compared to going by yourself and paying $40, right? I mean, that's 1/10 if you go in a large group, and so that's going to encourage and incentivize people going in large groups. Now, as we all know, if you've ever been on a campsite with just by yourself or one person, compared to being on a site with 7 or 8 other people, you know the impact that you have on that site. You know how you are going to beat that site down. You know how you're going to pick that entire area clean of firewood in a weekend, right? You know how you're going to impact the portages. And you know that there's going to be more litter. And we all know that, larger groups tend to be rowdier. They bring in a lot more crap. They bring out the lawn chairs and the beer coolers and stuff like that. And there's going to be a bigger problem. So it's not just that there's going to be, a family of 5 or 6 and stuff like that of experienced campers. What we're doing here is we're creating an incentive structure that is going to draw exactly the kinds of parties of people, right? The size of them that is most impactful. And that strikes me as being at odds with part of the mission of Ontario Parks, which is in part ecological preservation and providing as close to as possible an authentic wilderness experience. And that's the objection that I have with this. And so I think if anyone is going to be writing to their MP, as I'm going to be doing, as I would encourage anybody to do, you're going to write to your MP. If you're going to sign a formal petition or an online petition, as I have done, when you state your reason, include the fact that this creates these perverse incentives for larger, more impactful groups.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
Good example of that, Martin, is also Torrance Barrens in the south part of the Muskoka district. It's a good classic case where it's been heavily overused, and locals have been allowed to camp, have fires without any sense of integrity, propriety there. And Ontario Parks' answer to that is let's put campsites in and cash in on the amount of traffic. It's an easy, accessible park and a night sky reserve, one of the very few night sky reserves that we have in Ontario. And so, yeah, it's instead of dealing with the problem of overuse and no monitoring whatsoever, let's put more campsites in, charge more money. So that's it seems to be counterproductive when it comes to the ecological propriety and the whole emphasis why we have parks to begin with.
Right, exactly. Martin, thanks very much, man. You know what? You make some valid points there for sure. If you have anything else that you'd like to input, I invite you to drop out and then come back in there because, like I say, the more information we can get out there, the better.
Okay, I might do that. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Martin. Awesome, very good. Next that we're going to bring up, we have another popular YouTuber here. We have Mr. Ben Stacy. Ben, how you doing, man?
I'm good, thanks.
Awesome.
John, I wanted to thank you for your video because I hadn't heard anything about this before your video. So I think your video is responsible for a lot of people being aware of what's going on.
A lot of eyes.
Yeah. And actually, just as I was clicking in here, I like the idea you proposed of, raising it a little bit and then maybe having tiers. I mean, there's all sorts of other solutions that are more equitable. And I think that's the key. Not necessarily fair is not necessarily the right word, but equitable. Because we're supposed to be encouraging people to get out into nature and have access to nature. And if you're pricing it, that's an economic, you're only being able to access nature if you have a high enough economic status. And that's not equitable for people. But I mean, the fees right now. I mean, my thought on the fees. Obviously, I paddle mostly solo and in pairs. But the fees even right now are messed up. You mentioned how you're coming across people that are booking, 3 guys booking, 3 different sites on a lake. You're getting a whole lake. I have to admit, I have done that a couple of times, but only because we've been going up at different times. And it actually worked out cheaper for us to do that than to pay for an additional car. $13 a day in addition to the fees for camping for the additional car. So even right now, their fee structure is incentivized to force people to do weird things to get around it. So yeah, I mean, I have no problem with them streamlining things a bit as long as it works out sort of equitable for everyone. So anyway, that's just my thoughts really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Ben. I like how you put that. It doesn't have to be fair. Like fair, people it can rub them the wrong way and just make it seem like a pity party. But equitable is a better word, and it speaks to it being even for all, which is all I'm asking for.
And actually, in the CTV article that you think you have the link to, Dennis, it pointed out that 11% of users are solo, 38% are pairs. So that's 49% right there. Half the people are going to be impacted dramatically if they went with this kind of increase. And I didn't even mention how many people go in 3s. So, I mean, more than half of the people are going to be paying considerably more based on the pilot program. So,
yeah,
and you have to remember the size of the parks too. Like Algonquin, the average length of trip is 3 to 5 days, where Temagami, Wabakimi, Woodland, Caribou, the average length of trip is 7 to 10 days. So that's going to amount to a big price tag in the end.
Yep. Hey, thank you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Welcome, Donald. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing real good. How are you doing, Dennis?
Excellent.
Nice to see all you guys here. Listen to what you guys have been saying, especially you, Hap. You obviously know your outdoor politics quite well. It shows. And then John, that video, I watched that video that you put out about what's going on here. Very informative, for as much information as what you had. And same with you, Brad, too. You've things you've been talking about. You know what's going on here. So the point I wanted to make with this is like a lot of you guys are saying, is if you contact a ministry and you stomp your feet and say this isn't fair, nothing's going to come out of it. As Hap would know, working with the ministry, but a lot of times it's against the ministry because of their standings with a lot of things. You really have to take an educated approach to what's going on with this, and a political approach to what's going on with these park fees. An example, because I'm on the U.S. side, so I don't have a whole lot of say-so with the Ministry of Ontario. They're not really going to want to hear much of what I have to say, with the exception of when my son and I would cross the Minnesota border into Quetico. It cost us a lot of money. It was expensive for a remote border crossing permit, and then it came out to like $17 a night to stay in Quetico for each of us. And that varied depending on the money exchange. But on the U.S. side, the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness, what's done there, something that you all could bring up into the ministry, is you reserve a permit, and not campsites, not lakes. You just reserve a permit. And like I just did that for the spring, and the permit's $38. Whether I stay 3 nights or 30 nights, it's $38. It makes no difference. We don't have the signs, and we don't have the campsites, where you register or pre-register for them or anything. But that's something that y'all could put up with put out to the ministry is maybe look at some things the U.S. is doing to generate funds and how it's working out, like for the Boundary Waters or for Great Smoky Mountains, like you guys mentioned too. So.
Mm-hmm. That's another good point of reference.
That is a good point. I think John was pulling numbers from somewhere else. There's a lot to be learned from other platforms or other areas that the way they run things. And they not to say that everything that they're doing is correct, but you can draw some good points from those different structures, right?
Exactly. And this
those
would be-
parks are subsidized. I just wanted to reiterate that, as we are aware that the U.S. their parks are largely driven by taxes. And I mean, like, I've gone Rio Grande in Florida, Everglades. Like, I paid, I think, $22 to paddle for like 2 weeks.
Right.
Absolutely ridiculous. But everything's coming from taxpayer dollars. So then, if you want to talk about fair and equitable, then now you're asking the whole province of Ontario to pony up additional, I don't know how many dollars off their paycheck to pay our parks. I'm sure some people are going to be in favor of that, and I'm sure many people who don't use parks are going to say, what the heck am I paying for?
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. A lot of people want no part of that, because they don't use the parks at all.
Mm-hmm.
That is absolutely correct. Our tax dollars do, as much as things are, a lot of things are messed up in the government. Our tax dollars do go to a lot of good things. So,
awesome.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much. A very good panel tonight.
Thank you. Yeah. Great bunch of knowledgeable fellows we have here tonight. That's for sure. Thanks, Donald. Appreciate your input.
You bet. Thank you.
Excellent. Next, we got Algonquin Ari Rosen. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing really well. How are you doing, Dennis?
Oh, living the dream. Living the dream.
That's my line. People ask me every day, what am I doing? I say, I'm living the dream. And then we have to make some kind of silly comment afterwards.
Awesome.
Hey, how you doing?
Okay, so what do you got? Ari, your 2 minutes starts now.
All right. Well, I'm really disappointed in this flat rate thing. And I'm a solo canoeist. I do go with other people. But being a solo canoeist and then having to deal with this, it's very disappointing. But it's kind of like the gas price. When I pull into the gas station, regardless of what they're charging a liter, I need to fill up. So I'm kind of pissed when it's $1.47 and I'm doing it sheer when it's 90 cents. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's almost the same thing. Everybody needs to make money. And I understand that. But I don't feel as though that they've addressed the way they're making the money in the best way, because it's affecting us, like me, you, and I see a lot of solo paddlists on the board today and in the chat. It's very disappointing.
Yeah, that's the one. The one thing that you touch on there, and I wanted to bring that up as well, is like when we're talking about group paddling, right? It's not always a family circumstance where it's a family that's out there. I could understand how there again it could affect a family, but when it gets into, say, for instance, 4 buddies, Hap, John, and Brad and Dennis go out paddling, I'm more than willing to pay my portion of a per person fee. I make my own living. So does Brad. So does John. So does Hap. We could all be responsible for paying our own fees for camping out there. Right? It's not like it's all falling on one business. It's actually falling on 4 individuals. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's an interesting analogy with the gas, because there's actually pretty good transparency with gas prices. But when it comes to these park fees, it seems extremely convoluted. Maybe I can get it with the freedom of information request, but that's hoops and hoops to jump through.
Yeah,
and there's just no communication.
They'll probably give you some white paper with a lot of blacked out lines.
Yeah.
It'll be 500 pages long.
Hey, Hap, I wanted to recommend a book. You might want to read this one here.
No, I hate canoeing.
Written by this guy that he really knows what's going on, right? I think he lives a little north of Diamond Lake. You might have seen him up there.
You're a funny guy.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Ari. Appreciate you coming on.
I have one last question.
Make it quick.
To Hap. If I'm in Diamond Lake and I'm going to head up to your place, how long of a trip is it from Diamond into your area, the ecology you have?
Do you like portaging? The 2 milers right the north end of Diamond. It gets you in there quick.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've got a
couple of days. Take a couple of days because you want to. It's a beautiful trip up there. So you take your time going up the Lady Evelyn.
All right. Okay.
2 to 3 days. Take your time.
Thanks, Ari. Appreciate it.
All right. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Sure. And here's somebody that I really wanted to be on panel tonight, and he had a prior engagement. Kevin, how you doing tonight, sir?
No, I bailed. I didn't want to be with these people. They were so emotional. No, I'm actually at a conference talking to a youth court group actually tonight, and it's really interesting. So I'm allowed a 10-minute pee break right now. So I'm saying, nope, I will hold in my urine for you, Dennis.
Thank you.
I'll do the 2 minutes for you. I think it's important that we do the 2 minutes. I got some points. First of all, Brad, you were supposed to get a haircut. Like, what the hell happened? Okay.
When I shave the beard in a week, I'll get it.
Okay. So that's more important. But
Dennis, you have to remind Kevin that this is a family show.
Yes.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Kevin got a haircut too, though. Holy cow.
I did today, and it all came down as white. It was bad. Okay, so we all have some really good points here. I've been doing a lot of media lately. I know Hap has as well through CTV News and CBC and stuff like that. And we all have to show both sides. And even tonight, the youth court group I'm talking about, they're all happy with this whole change because it was costing them a fortune to go into Algonquin and other parks. So that they're hoping that this will change. Solo people like myself are all pissed off to hell. Like I don't have any money. We're Canadian writers, right? Hap? We make no money, right? I mean, Brad can't even afford a haircut. But I wrote this down so to make sure that I do the 2-minute thing. So I'm really unhappy we haven't heard a response from Ontario Parks, and it's a given. I know the history of Ontario Parks. I know how politics happen. I know it's frustrating. I would like to say there's a lot of people working for Ontario Parks that are so frustrated right now. And I can't speak for them. I talked to them last night and the night before on the phone. They're very upset because they have no voice. I mean, I left Ontario Park because I had no voice. That's why I started writing and being on my own, because I could have my own voice. But they know that things are happening and they're upset about it. But time will tell, right? So don't go nuts on the poor friggin' individual that's at the gatehouse, for heaven's sakes, right? So the also thing is the last point is, what about the chipmunks? Nobody's thought about the chipmunks, the trees, the ecology of the park. This is so anthropocentric, everybody. We have to really think about it. Aldo Leopold warned us about it. Reverend Thomas Malthus warned us about it. Eric Morse, Bill Mason, Thoreau especially warned us about anthropocentric views. We're all looking about us. We're not thinking about the ecology of the park. And Ontario Parks isn't either. Parks Canada didn't when they created Banff. So the history of parks really was actually to deal with the crowds and deal with the people that want to see wilderness. But the true park is a place where we don't go. Really, you think about it. A true wilderness park is a place that we're not allowed in, except for the chipmunk. So there's my 2 minutes.
Oh, Kevin Callan always some excitement there. Like, yeah, Kevin, you're all right, man.
I gotta go. I gotta talk to some young people.
You don't know how to spit that one out.
Oh, well, I wrote it down this time.
There you go. For those of you that may have or may not have, Kevin and Hap were actually featured a little bit in a CTV interview today. There again, in the resources below in the description, you'll find a link to that article if you want to check that out. It's a short read, but there again adds some incitement into what's going here. So definitely worth a look.
Okay, I got 1.5 minutes to pee now before I'm on the board again. So Brad, get a haircut. Thanks for coming in.
Green room if you want later, Kevin.
Okay, John, you're looking gorgeous. Your teeth are white as pearl. And Hap, you're more attractive than anybody in the entire board.
There you go. I hope Kevin just put a smile on like 99% of the chat's face. Everybody's sitting there all like this, and now they're all like this, right? So awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.
We'll figure it out, guys. We will, because we're communicating, and that's what Pallers do. They communicate with each other, and we'll get it done. Okay.
That's the beauty part of this entire show, man. Thanks very much, Kevin. We'll talk later. Another quick, we got somebody else in the basement here. Does anybody have anything they want to add right now before we get to our next guest and I ask my next poll? Anybody?
I think people have brought up a lot of good points, some of which I wanted to touch on too, but just under time constraints, we haven't got there. I really like Martin's points regarding ecological integrity, and that's something I wanted to touch upon too if we had the time. But I think he put it the point very eloquently there and made it well known. So I don't think we really need to dwell on that anymore either. But I think these other individuals bringing on the show, Dennis, are doing a great job of ironing out the rest of the kinks that we can talk about.
Yeah, well, you know what, Martin, if you're still in the chat, I know that, but if you'd like to come up and ask another question or give us another comment or tutorial, feel free to pop on, because I see one in the basement. But before Mark, I see you down there. But before we get to you, I'm just going to ask another quick little survey. John put out this fantastic video as we've been talking about week and a half ago, about 10 days ago, right? It's seen. How many eyes have seen it there, John? How many views approximate?
I'm not sure, 23,000 or something.
23,000 like people have watched this. At least 23,000, right? That doesn't count people watching in pairs, right? Anyways, how many people in the chat here tonight were not even aware of this program before maybe you've seen Kevin's or John's video, or perhaps this show tonight, or a post on Facebook over the last week and a half? How many people? Put a number 1 in there if you didn't know anything about this whole pilot fee structure. Curious to see how many people actually knew about it and how under the radar this actually was for many, right? Which, yeah. Anyways, we got Mark from the OG in the Canoe. How you doing, buddy?
How's it going, guys?
Good. What have you got to add tonight?
It's not necessarily questions. It's just I just have 2 comments. Like, I mean, people that watch me or whatever, they know I'm from Quebec, right? And me and my buddy actually, we already in Quebec here. We already have the price gouging that's happening in the CPAC parks, right? So we already have that, and we actually go to Ontario because we get nicer facilities, nicer places for less amount of money, even after the gas. So I'm thinking that if this whole thing goes down in Ontario parks, like, where are the Ontario people going to go? Like, the province over? Like, is it going to be the same situation that's been happening? And I've done backcountry camping, but especially in car camping, I'll go across the border, and I'd say 75% of the people are from Quebec, because they don't want to pay the elevated prices that they're charging here to camp. Mm-hmm. So like that's one thing, like I'm saying, is like, if all this goes down, like, where does everybody go at that point? And the other thing is that, like I mostly camp in Algonquin, and to have like a fixed price for a group rate, anybody that's been to Algonquin, you can get to a lake and you can get to a campsite and you barely have a place to set up a tent and a hammock. How are they going to justify charging for multiple people when those multiple people, like, let's say you go with the maximum amount of people, you get there and there's not even enough place to set up everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand the justification of the price increase,
Yeah, just gonna based on kind of on that. Here's a comment from our Facebook feed going on right now. Helga's saying surprise. It was a surprise for them last year, but they still booked 14 days in Mississauga. I'd be curious to know how many people were in your party, and if you felt that it was a justified fee for you, your party, or your family. Sorry, that's my beeper saying out of time. You had another question, though, Mark?
No, it wasn't a question. It was just
another comment.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, just really quick while we have you then, a quick question about that. What are the fee structure systems like in Quebec?
Well,
that forces you to come over here. I know it's expensive, but what's it like?
Essentially, the CPAC system is you pay a fixed rate per site, but then you have to pay a per day access fee per person. Right. So if you go, I'm going to take car camping, for example. I'm not going to even go backcountry because, like I said, I've never gone backcountry here because it doesn't make sense. But you pay, let's say, $36 a night for your campsite. Now you have 6 people that go with you. You have to pay, I think it's like $6 or $7 park access fee per day per person. So if you're there for 4 days, you're paying that per access fee every day for every person that's on your site.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I mean, we've done research into going to like Parc La Vérendrye, and it's not just the fees that they charge for the CPAC, but it's also the fees that they charge. Like, you get charged. I can have a Quebec fishing license, and I have to pay per day per species to fish in the park, despite the fact that I have a permit. So we're like, no, forget about that. We're going to go to Ontario.
Gosh, I hope it never gets to that here in Ontario.
So,
We don't want
We're
to
doing this, eh?
Pardon?
That's why we're doing this, eh?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Helga, thanks for getting back too. So there are two of you, and it was cheaper than Cuba. Okay. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. We do have Martin Pine in the basement here, wanting to come back up. So we will talk to you a little later, Mark.
All right.
Thanks. And welcome back, Martin. How you doing?
Good, thanks.
Good.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about a concern that I've heard from a lot of other people, and it's a concern that I share, and that's the impact that this will have on Crown land. So in the past year, because of COVID, a lot of people who wanted to go into the parks couldn't, and so they were making a lot of inquiries into Crown land. Now, Brad will attest to this. I've been sort of actively promoting the exploration of Crown land and going out and finding spots and camping. He's been doing the same thing with his channel as well for many years. So I think we're sort of partners in this promotion of Crown land camping. But this past year, I have been alarmed by what I've been seeing. There are a number of Facebook groups that I belong to. Brad, I believe, belongs to some of them, and a number of inquiries about where can I go for Crown land camping? I want to bring my ATV. Where can I park my trailer? The number of large groups that want to do this, not just individuals who are sort of graduating from front country camping and a service site to backcountry canoeing in some place like Algonquin or Temagami or something like that, to Crown land camping on where there's no known route. They just want to explore. That sort of orderly transition that normally happens, that kind of graduating, isn't happening. Now, all of a sudden, everyone has heard about Crown land camping. They all seem to want to do it. And I'm talking about in their thousands. I mean, there's a dozen posts a day that I'm seeing on these Crown land Facebook groups of people asking, where can I go? It's because they just finally heard about it. And I think the worst thing that could happen to our Crown lands, which, I mean, let's face it, the ministry just doesn't pay any attention to Crown land. It's a shit show out there. Sorry, family show. My apologies for that. But I mean, it is the people who sort of look after Crown lands and established waterways out there is us. It's people who've been camping for years and know how to camp, how to strive towards the leave no trace ideal, that kind of thing. And unfortunately, we're seeing a whole pile of people who are very raw, brand new, suddenly begging for places to camp on Crown land, and they're being given, GPS coordinates and stuff like that.
McRae Lake.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a terrible. Yeah, but that's just one of many examples. Right now there is a Facebook group. I was just been informed of this by a friend of mine. A friend of mine belongs to a Facebook group. And it's about backcountry camping, and it's one of those groups where people sort of get together to find a partner to go camping. Well, now there's a group of individuals that are basically throwing big parties out on the Poker Lake system. It's closed right now. You're not allowed to be there at all. There's no camping allowed right there. But they're saying, "Yay, Crown land!" And they are putting out videos of themselves with chainsaws cutting and burning. I'm not exaggerating. 3 cords of wood. That means grotesque. It's obscene. That area is going to be trashed by the end of the summer. Okay, the park's not even open yet. So this is a concern that I have, and I think this is another concern that we can sort of advance to sort of the powers that be, which is that our parks serve us. As Kevin said, the wilderness is the wilderness. We try to leave it alone. The parks are the place where we learn how to live and camp in wilderness. It's a kind of a safe place. There's an established route. There are signs. It's made kind of hospitable. It's a kind of wilderness hotel, and we cut our teeth and we learn how to do it. And then, if we're so inclined, we can move on to camping on Crown land, where we are the stewards And no one's picking up after us. We are picking up. We're doing the cleanup, and we are knowledgeable enough not to impact it excessively. But that's all going out the window right now. So this is a policy, as I see it, that is going to drive people to Crown land. I mean, look, if you raise the price of cigarettes, if you just tax the price of cigarettes, what happens? People buy cigarettes illegally. They find another way to buy contraband cigarettes. And it's exactly what is going to happen. It is happening already. And the policy hasn't even started. It's just because of COVID. There's a sudden demand. The parks aren't available. Oh, okay. Wait, there's this free place where I can go camping? I don't have to reserve. I don't have to pay. Oh my goodness, right? And people are not going to unlearn this. They're not going to forget that this exists, that it happened. So I think the last thing we want is, again, this perverse incentive to be in place that drives people to a place that is free, that has no reservation system. They don't have to book. They don't have to be on a certain lake or a certain site on a certain date and travel according to a schedule. All the things that make Crown land great are going to attract all the wrong people right now, and for the most venial of reasons. They just want to save some money. So that's another concern I have. I think people are right to be worried about that. I'm worried about it, and I'm already seeing it happen.
Well, because of logging interest, we've got 3 wilderness parks that were established far too small for the ecological integrity. That would be Woodland Caribou, Temagami, and Wabakimi. And they were allowing extensive cutting to the boundaries of all 3 parks, and you'll see this in all parks. And unfortunately, you're right about Crown land, when there's no management system in place for Crown lands, and that's where most of the resource extraction is taking place. So it's going to be a rude awakening for a lot of people who think Crown land is kind of the panacea to cure all the concerns about paying too much, too high a price. But we've got 3 parks that were should have been established with a larger inventory in mind. Like Temagami, I worked on the park plans for Lady Evelyn Smoothwater, and we had the initial plan protecting 93% of the features, the ANSI sites, the archaeological sites, according to their sensitive features report, which is now missing, strangely enough. And but that was we were shot down because of strictly because of logging interest, in that it would take too much of the inventory away from logging companies. So this is not unusual what's happening in setting different precedents, and now we've got a small inventory and too many people using the Ontario parks, which you're right, it's going to push people into the Crown land, which is going to be problematic in itself because there's no management, there's no maintenance program, there's nothing going on. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting summer.
Yeah.
And Martin, I wanted to pick up on OG's point, but I think you literally just took the words out of my mouth there, because he was asking where do people go, and you're absolutely right. It's the Crown land. And I see it as a pro and a con, because I see on the one side of things the experienced paddlers such as ourselves and the audience at large here who traditionally use these parks, who may be dissuaded by a change in the fee structure system, may now be more incentivized to paddle some of these underutilized Crown land routes. And of course, that might go far to preserve some of these routes, but you're right, to your point as well. The con is folks who are woefully unprepared or are stepping into it and have no regard for the land will, end up destroying that route that us experienced paddlers would love to go out, cherish, and retrace and keep alive again. So, yeah, I mean, if we do get some people out of the parks, it could be a potential savior for some of the routes. But you're right, those southern Ontario regions are hit really, really hard with the mixed use. And then the northern Ontario regions are really, really hit hard, to Hap's point as well, with the resource extraction as well. And I even saw it in the comments as well. I think Nate made a point there that, yeah, if you have a lot of user issues on the land, it invites a municipality or another governmental jurisdictional body to come in and either shut other individuals out from it or open it up for other forms of usage such as development or whatnot. I mean, it might be a positive if we shut out camping completely. You see that happen in certain areas as well. I mean, it's happened in Torrance Barrens. It might happen in other parks down there as well too that are getting destroyed because we simply don't have the manpower to patrol these areas. I mean, that's where the money from these fees are going to, in some regards, to patrolling some of these parks. But if people aren't willing to pay it and they're not willing to use the parks and they're going to go and destroy the land, then who's there to help secure and be a steward for those lands too? So. Yeah, I see some pros, but I see a lot of cons as well too to driving people away potentially.
You know what? You see it quite often in the we'll call, for lack of another better term, once again, Algonquin Park. You know, the management within the park there, I think they do a great job. You know, they're in there clearing trails and stuff like that. But how often have you gone to Algonquin Park and you found garbage in the thunder boxes, or trash, some sort of trash around a campsite that obviously has been sitting there from one year to the next that hasn't been cleaned up? And that's with a pretty good management and with some staff that gets in there and actually does take care of the backcountry. When you're not actually managing the backcountry, or in the case of what Martin's talking about with Crown Land, there's nobody there to take care of that stuff, right? So the fact that the money's not going into the things that we would like to see it going into is to me, a big issue or a big problem.
I just wanted to say something. A lot of people in the comments have been saying, you know, is there anything we can do right now? Well, of course, there's formal petitions. There's an online petition that's been circulating that a lot of us have signed. Online petitions really have no standing, legally, politically. No one has to read them. But
the permanent link is up there at the top of your chat, everybody. I put a permanent link there if you want to sign the petition.
Yeah, no, I signed it, and there's value in that petition, but it's not because it's going to, impress someone at Queen's Park who's going to read through this list of names. The value is that online petitions are easily shared. You can share them on social media all over the place, and that's what people should do. You should sign that petition. And share it. We want this message to get out. We want as many people to know about it. We want people to appreciate the ecological impacts, especially that we've been talking about. Not just that, you're reaching into my pocket. It can't be just about that, because there's not enough people who camp, who give a damn, right? So people are just not going to be sympathetic to this. But there's a lot of people out there who never camp, who care mightily about the environment. And this can make a difference. So that's one thing you can do, is just sign that petition and share it in your social media, so that it'll get around, and and maybe enough of the right people who can make enough noise and who have the right connections, and maybe just a big enough percentage of people will write to their elected representatives to make a difference, so that someone in opposition can raise the point, for instance. And the other thing you can do is share this live stream. Share this this discussion that we're having, because I think we've covered an awful lot of the concerns that surround this, better than any document or article that I've read. And I've been looking online. I've been listening to things, and I mean, honestly, I think we've gone into this into greater depth than anything you'll find anywhere else. So it might be a good thing, so that your friends who are into the outdoors can learn about this.
And not only that, but you know what? There are a lot of voices in here tonight. I've seen at one point over 290 people in the chat. These are all voices. Us on screen are a small majority of what we're seeing here. And you know what? Everybody's voice. We all need to band together on this to stress or to try and have them implement a system that is more fair and just. We're never going to get away from having to pay fees. Let's face it. It's not a reality. But just trying to make the system fair for everybody there. Something I didn't really want to touch on there, Hap, and it was something that I know you had touched on in a couple of your interviews and things that you were saying about what's going to end up happening if people start going into these parks and they don't want to pay the fees. They're going to end up doing what? They end up squatting, things like that.
Well, first of all, Dennis, my wife said, don't talk about boycotting permits fees or anything like that tonight.
So I just like to touch on
I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go there.
Want it to happen. We don't want it to happen. We're not encouraging this.
I
by all means.
don't think that's no. You know what? Whether I've had people say that I'm just going to pay the fine. It's going to be cheaper than me if I solo paddle for 7 to 10 days in Temagami. I might as well just pay the fine. Well, that's up to the individual, but I don't think it's not the way to go.
Can I say why it's not the way to go?
Yeah.
We're not encouraging this, everybody. Please.
Yeah, it's important because I'm someone who believes in the moral duty of civil disobedience, but you have to be intelligent about it. And this is not a sort of let's chain ourselves to the bulldozers kind of situation. I think if you end up squatting on a site and refusing to move, the problem is that you're coming into conflict not with Ontario Parks. You're coming into conflict with someone who paid to be there, and you could have a very ugly altercation. I know if I was paying through the nose to camp on a certain site on a certain lake, in like the 1 or 2 weeks of vacation that I've been looking forward to all summer, and there's somebody there who refuses to go who hasn't paid, and now I have to shove off it to some other lake and hope I can find a spot, or suddenly make a bush site where I'm not allowed to make one. That's a problem. So I think we want to encourage people to be sort of on our side here and not build animus between ourselves and other campers. What we want is solidarity, and this is a situation where I think refusing to pay and squatting would create a real problem there, breakdown in solidarity.
With respect to solidarity and your previous point, Martin, do we have a paddlers interest group in Ontario? Like there's the WCA, Wilderness Canoe Association. Is there a group in Ontario that will represent our interests collectively? Because right now we're such individuals, and if a few of us hadn't said peep about this, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So is there a group that you can think of that would be able to represent paddlers in this province?
Others could speak better to that, or maybe if Kevin Callan's.
I'm not aware.
Yeah, I don't belong to any such organizations myself, so I'm the last person who could answer that.
I believe there's somebody I've seen in the chat from the WCA. Maybe they might know. If you do, please do pipe it into the chat over there so that we know.
Yeah, some canoe groups are reluctant to get into political issues because some of them are funded by the government, so they just tend to stay away from that kind of issue.
Yeah, which is super problematic for a situation like this. Maybe that's something we need.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, collectively, we don't have a strong voice from the back paddlers, from self-propelled recreational interests, not like United States. So, this is something that we need to work on.
Yeah. Joshua Scuds is asking, where can we be updated as this issue progresses? Does anybody know of any resource where we can, keep up to date on what Ontario Parks is actually doing, or how this program might be transpiring?
The Ontario.ca newsfeed would have any updates to if they implement it or not. But as far as getting real-time updates, you're probably not going to get a bi-weekly report on how the pilot project's going. You're going to have to wait until they finalize their study, obviously. And if there's any updates, you can either contact likely a PR representative at the parks or wait for the report to come out. And I'm sure that'll be on ontarioparks.ca, or it'll be on the ontario.ca/news. You'll get any of the Ontario government news briefs come out on there too. So the only other way I suggest is just by trying to keep in contact with parks, or try to establish maybe some form of communication with parks.
Yeah. We're nearing, it's 8:51 right now, according to my computer. We got about 10 minutes left in the show. If there's anybody in the chat that has any questions or input, I will take maybe one more person to pop up on screen if it's like within the next minute here. But if not, if you have questions you'd like to put in the chat that we might be able to provide some insight to, please do put it in now. I know I've missed a lot of fantastic questions in the chat tonight. It's just impossible for me as a one person technician here to keep up with it all. I apologize for that. But if you have a question, please do put it in the chat now, and I'll try and get it up on screen here to get some things answered. Hap, do you have anything else that you'd like to add? I know, everybody has their own opinion, but do you have suggestions as to how this might change or how it could change?
Yeah, I have no idea. Actually, I can't really add to that. I think we've discussed just about everything that can be discussed about the issue. From just in the past dealing with the Ontario government, it goes back to the fact that the ministry Ontario Parks has difficulty in acknowledging the real root requirements for the sustainability of parks and certainly the values of non-timber values that they're not educated or trained to deal with the I think the root essence of backcountry travel and why we go out there. And the whole ecological integrity is pretty much tossed out the door because of the the possibility of increasing fees and creating campsites and modernizing backcountry routes. It's just, I don't know where it's going to go from here, to tell you the truth. I'm hopeful. I have faith in people coming together in a collective way, in a collective voice to make the changes necessary. So, that it's fair to people who really can't afford to pay that much to go back, backcountry paddling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. What do you think, John? Same thing?
Yeah, I would just wanted to come out of this with a way to move forward. And I don't think there's a lot else we can do right now. Like, the pilot project is underway. I think we've made our point as paddlers, and we could keep hounding them, but I think that's borderline impolite. So I think we've made our point for now, and we'll see where this goes next April. And if they roll it out, then we're gonna kick up this battle again. Yeah, definitely. I just find it quite interesting how it snuck under the radar up until, well, not really under the radar, because a lot of people were aware of it, but I'm just wondering why everything, the water's starting to splash now. Is it because the warmer weather's coming out? Is that why things are starting to get more noticeable when people are wanting to get out now? Because, hey, the warmer weather's here, right? Could have something to do with it. So, yeah, interesting. I'm going to pop up a couple quick questions. If anybody in here wants to take it, I'm not going to point it at anybody in particular, but Paddling Adventures Radio, I imagine that's Sean Rowley. How hard is it to write a reservation system for a per-person fee with a cap on 4 or more bookings on one site? Seems logical. Soloists pay per person, and groups get capped at a flat rate. That's sort of a tiered type of system, right? I think that's a fair assessment. Something that might be fair and just for all. Thoughts, boys? Anybody? Pretty easy.
Yep.
Seems pretty damn easy.
Yeah. All right. Another quick question here. Oh no, here we go. From Nate Muskoka: is a taxpayer subsidy the answer to fee increases?
I think that's a fair question, because think of all the programs that get funded in this province with taxpayer dollars that have very small user groups, probably a lot smaller than paddlers. And why not us? Why not something that's also meeting other goals like ecological integrity and getting people involved in nature so they actually care about it? It seems as valid as any other hobby to be funded.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential benefits that would stem from that. You could have an entire show on if you want to take an anthropocentric viewpoint of how we benefit culturally, economically, spiritually from protecting the landscape. We could go off for days or hours having a long show about that. But you're not just benefiting the paddlers, you're benefiting all these other things, some of which you can't even put a dollar value on, because they provide services in other distinct ways, such as like clean water, air you breathe, erosion and flood prevention, species. It just goes on and on and on. It's not just paddlers. We're a vocal group here, but those fees are going towards a great deal, many other things.
Mm-hmm. And obviously we're fighting a losing battle with this government. Like, it's falling on deaf ears, but
Yeah. Another thing, you know what, and this might be way out in left field. And one thing that I was wondering about this whole price structuring system is, okay, so like even with the per person per night fee, in my opinion, why are you even charging for children 12 and under? They should be encouraging families to get out. You know what I mean? Introducing the youth to the backcountry. It's them, those children that are the ones that are going to end up being the future paddlers and the future people that are taking care of the backcountry if they're taught right. By charging parents to take their kids out into the backcountry, it might be limiting some people. The one big thing that we never talked on was, the income rate of people. It's got to be affordable for people. You know what I mean? It can't be out of the means of people with a lower income in a lower income bracket that they can't afford to do what we like to do. So there's a lot to touch on. My God, this is a very deep subject. Yeah. Scary is asking, would any colleges or university have an interest in examining the environmental impact? Kevin spoke of it. Martin, you spoke of it. Hap, you certainly spoke of it as well. That'd be something that would be interesting. And I'm not sure if there is a program like that, but does anybody know if there's any universities or colleges that are, maybe doing any of these environmental impact studies? Or is that basically all parks? Nobody?
No, I can't speak to any active studies, but it's definitely been done before. I mean, even as I was just looking for some stats here before our discussion today, I found studies from other universities about the tendencies of individuals for booking campsites and reservations in parks, and how far in advance do they book, and how big is the party size, and are they booking front country with electrical services, or are they utilizing day use facilities? And it's of importance to many groups. So I'm sure there is some individual out there thinking that this might be a great little bit of research to probe, but that's these are going to wait until the pilot project's actually done, results that they could actually provide an analysis on, because right now at this point in time we really don't have results and numbers that have come in to tell us what the outcome of this pilot project is, besides obviously a vocal group of us paddlers here having different opinions on the matter.
Yeah. Yep. Well, you know what, gentlemen, we're at that 9 o'clock hour. I think we covered a lot of bases tonight. Hopefully we conveyed a lot of information to everybody to the best of our abilities. I know there's a lot to be said that would have been really nice to have had a representation from Ontario Parks to be on here to give their side of the story, because as everybody knows, there's two sides to the coin, right? The best thing we could do is our research. Hap, John, Brad, everybody that came on panel, Martin, thank you very much for everybody's input tonight. It was, I was honestly very nervous coming into this show, but I'll touch on that in just 1 minute. Please don't leave the stream yet, because I do have a little editorial comment that I would like to convey across to everybody as to my feelings about this, and it might make a bit of difference as well. But thank you, everybody, for coming into the live stream tonight. Obviously, it's affecting a lot of people, and it needs a lot of work. So, any closing statements, Hap?
No, just keep the faith. That's all I can say.
Yeah. John?
No, nothing right now. If we need to organize, if this escalates, then we're going to do that.
Okay, well, I'm willing to do my part over here. Brad, anything you'd like to close with?
Paddle on, enjoy the parks, guys. Don't be dissuaded to explore some of these areas. I mean, if you have the income to pony up at this point in time to do it, don't miss out, because who knows, fees might go up in the future as well too. But save it. Some of these places like Temagami are absolutely worth every penny you spend to go in and paddle them. And if not, if you're so turned off by it, there are a plethora of excellent Crownland canoe routes out there. There's many folks such as Hap, John, myself, and Martin can all help you out with some of the details going to those places too. But in the interim, keep your voices loud, but be respectful about it as well too. And we'll see where this pilot project goes. It's not the nail in the coffin, but it's it's a start of something, but it might not be the end of something. So keep the faith as well, guys.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Martin, you got anything you'd like to close with as well?
No, I think I said my piece. Thank you very much for hearing me out again.
Yeah, hey, not a problem. Stick around, fellas. I'm going to put you all down into the green room. I appreciate it if you stick around so we could have our post-show chat and maybe share a dram of whiskey or something like that just to take the edge off. So, Hap, we'll see you in the basement. John, Martin, and Brad, we'll see you in a moment.
Thanks, Dennis.
Well, everybody, I hope, like I say, I know I've said it a few times, I hope this really opened your eyes and actually added a little bit of information as to all the stuff that's going on here. Hopefully it's educated everybody a bit. As I mentioned, I really was hoping to have somebody from the ministry on, but I know you really got to jump through some hoops to make that happen. I just want to close out tonight's show by reminding everybody that we are here every Tuesday evening. If you haven't already done so, if you enjoyed the show, please do hit that thumbs up. And if you would like to see more content like this or some great interviews with some fantastic YouTube creators like the ones that were on the show tonight, by all means, do hit that subscribe button. We're here every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Now we're under EDT, so that's cool. In closing, for a YouTube channel that typically, I had to write this down so I wouldn't forget anything, but for a YouTube channel that typically stays away from political type issues, I felt this topic needed to be addressed to give people the opportunity to voice their opinions. Upon posting this show to various social media outlets, I quickly come to realize that indeed this fee structuring system does not seem to be a fair fit for everyone. Not to say that there will ever be a way to please everyone, but the current system they are running as a pilot is flawed and may suit some, but is also unfair to many. All of the replies and conversations that were posted on my Facebook post leading up to this show, and that was overwhelming. I couldn't believe how many people shared and how many people actually commented and got strings of comments going along. But let's see here. Personally believe that the fees will always be a part of the Ontario Park structure to help them achieve sustainability. However, a system that is fair for the masses, one that does not gouge Canadian citizens, limit those in low-income groups, or punish large groups or solo explorers needs to be implemented. On the same note, more transparency from Ontario Parks and the minister needs to be addressed. I did reach out, as you know, and I had absolutely no response, which I think is not appropriate. If we all sit idly by and do not voice our concerns, who knows what will happen to our beloved backcountry that all of us enjoy and look forward to using year-round. Will it become too expensive? Will it become governed by too many rules? Will it be inaccessible to everyone? Will it become unenjoyable? You be the judge. Let your voice be heard, and perhaps enough people will make a difference. Keep the adventures alive, everybody, and we'll see you next Tuesday evening. Take care.